Who give me the signal? There?
Oh, I have no idea.
Oh, okay. Yes. Okay. Good evening. Good evening. Can you hear me? Yes. Can everyone hear me well? Wonderful. Good evening, community leaders, advocates, neighbors, students, and friends. It is a pleasure to welcome you to CUNY School of Law and to host Senator Kristen Gonzalez for her State of the District. Woo! Tonight, we celebrate Senator Gonzalez's leadership, her vision, and the meaningful impact she is already making, not only in this district, but across this city. Senator Gonzalez represents a vibrant, diverse part of New York City that includes and covers Queens, this district, you're in her district right now, Brooklyn, is Brooklyn in the house? And Manhattan, oh yes, oh yes. She connects with the people she serves, lifts up their voices, and fights tirelessly for the issues that matter most, from affordable housing to workers' rights to climate justice and election protection. Her work is already making a notable positive difference in the lives of people across the district, and I have to say across the city. We are proud to host this event here at CUNY School of Law, New York City's only, thank you, we could clap for CUNY, only public and public interest law school, an anchor of connection in the heart of Queens. Senator Gonzalez's State of the District brings together neighbors, advocates, and civic leaders, sharing the law school's commitment to public service, inclusion, and social impact that guides her work. At CUNY Law, we are inspired by her example and share her mission of strengthening communities, advancing justice, and fostering inclusion and diversity. And I have to say, Senator Gonzalez makes it a point to say that she works in partnership with communities, in partnership with neighborhood partners throughout her district, and also in partnership with her partners in government. And we are so pleased this evening to have joining us Assembly Member Claire Valdez. Please welcome her as well. Assembly Member Valdez will say a few words and then we'll introduce Senator Kristen Gonzalez. With that, please join me in welcoming Assembly Member Claire Valdez. Woo!
Okay, good evening, CUNY Law School. Such an honor and privilege to be here with you all this evening. My name is Claire Valdez. I represent Long Island City, Sunnyside, Woodside, Maspeth, and Ridgewood, and I have the incredible honor of overlapping districts here in Long Island City with Senator Kristen Gonzalez. Just a couple nights ago, Senator Gonzalez and I were on at a rally together for some terminated workers alongside CWA and News Guild and Condé Nast Union. And it was such a explicit example of the way that Kristen shows up for workers, shows up for people who need her solidarity and support. And that passion and power is exhibited every single day in Albany and here in New York City. And I can't tell you enough how incredible it is to have a partner in government at the state Senate level in the work that we do. And so I have now the real honor of introducing my friend and my colleague, Senator Kristen Gonzalez.
All right. Hi, everyone. Good evening. It is so good to be here. Can you hear me? Amazing. I just want to start by saying thank you so much. Can we get another round of applause for our Dean, Natalie Gomez-Velez? And of course, Claire Valdez. I will say, Natalie, just speaking about CUNY Law, Natalie's actually a constitutional rights scholar and lawyer, and she's leading up one of the best public interest law institutions in the country. And I feel like it's really important to shout that out at a time where we need more of this in our country. So thank you so much for hosting us. Of course, we're getting close to Thanksgiving, so I want to start with some more thank yous. I want to thank the CUNY Law team who helped put this together. We have our events team. We have Kelly, of course. Can we give Kelly some love? Karen and Karina some love. And then, of course, our IT department, Chris, Jesse, and Tasha. Thank you guys so much. They are in the booth. They are holding it down. So for those of you at home, thank you for joining us. And I, of course, want to end by thanking each and every one of you for showing up tonight. It is the second part of a series that our office has been doing. We had a federal cuts town hall a couple of weeks ago. And it's so important in this time that together as a district, we are doing the work to make sure we understand what's happening federally, what's happening at the state level, and also getting ready for next year. So it means a lot when I see you take your free time, your night, and come here to have this conversation, to learn a little bit more about what we're doing. And of course, I'm going to thank you in advance because I'm going to ask you all for help as we fight for all of these important things together. So thank you for being here and for joining us. And then finally, I want to thank my team. We have Catherine Demby, who put this all together. And if you are on my team or a volunteer, if you could raise your hand in the back. These are the incredible folks who have not only made this happen, but tonight, as we are having this presentation, who are going to collect your questions through note cards. So I know when you came in, you got a note card. If you want to write down a question, feel free to at any point. And then for the folks who raise their hands, you can kind of signal to them, hold up your card, they'll come and collect it. And then at the end, we'll do our Q&A. So with that, I'm going to get started, talk a little bit through our agenda for tonight, and then keep it going. So I'm going to start with a quick about me so that you all get to know me. I know it's been 3 years, but for some of you, we see a lot of familiar faces, but some new ones tonight. We want to make sure that you know who I am. We also want to reintroduce our district. It is a really unique three-borough district that has a lot to offer, but a lot that unites us. And then from getting to know me, getting to know the district, we're going to transition a little bit into the work that we've been doing, what we did this year, and then what we're going to be doing next year. And then, of course, get into our Q&A so that we can address some of the questions that came in online and then some from the crowd as well. All right. So hi, my name is Kristen. I am your state senator. I was born and raised right here in Queens to a single parent. My father passed away when I was really young. And my mom is a paraprofessional special education teacher. She worked with autistic and Down syndrome students. Do we have any educators in the room tonight? I know we have one at least and two in the back. I see Chris, I see you there. So thank you so much for joining us. You know, she's been teaching for over 20 years now. She really loves it. But being a paraprofessional, like many educators, she is criminally underpaid. And growing up in Elmhurst with her really showed me how hard the city can be for working families. Even though she had a union job, even though she had steady income, it still was way too difficult. And that colored a lot of my work and my organizing. I got involved at a really young age. I started organizing in high school and on my college campus. And when I was working before taking this role as your state senator in tech, I spent a lot of my time organizing right here in Western Queens. I was on my community board, on Community Board 4. I worked on, you guys see some more community board folks in the house tonight. I worked on the Western Queens Community Land Trust, which has been incredible. I know I see some of the founding members right here in the crowd. And then I worked on Internet for All initiatives and mutual aid efforts. And all of this led to me being recruited to run for office when our district was drawn in 2022. So you'll see, I'm a tech worker, former tech worker, turned activist in office. And then in 2023, after I won my election, I was sworn in as the youngest woman to serve in the state Senate. And that's been an incredible opportunity because we need a lot more energy, but we also need some more tech workers in office. So we've brought both of those things to the legislature. I was very lucky to be appointed the chair of the Internet Technology Committee. Since taking office in the last 3 years, I've also been appointed chair of the Elections Committee at the same time. So I chair 2 committees. And tonight we're going to talk a little bit about how we're using that to fight for our platform for working families. So let's get into our district. As you all know, we got our 3-borough district. I heard the shout outs tonight for Queens, Brooklyn, and Manhattan. And that means we have a lot of wonderful, not only neighborhoods that are listed here that I know a lot of you are from, but we have a lot of incredible overlaps in the assembly, in the city council. Today, we were joined by Assemblymember Claire Valdez. I also overlap with Assemblymember Gallagher, Assemblymember and future mayor Zoran Mamdani. Who represents this law school, but we're so excited to represent us in City Hall. And then I overlap with former Assemblymember Harvey Epstein, current Assemblymember Alex Flores. And in the City Council, we also have a long list. We have Tiffany Caban, we have Lincoln Ressler, we have Julie Wan, and then we have Keith Powers over in Manhattan. They have been incredible partners. I like shouting them out because everything we do as a government really requires those relationships and a united front amongst our elected officials. I think we can move to the next slide. So being your state senator, representing this very diverse district, the Senate office is here to be really a vehicle for help, right, to serve. So I wanted to talk about what we do and why we do it. First and foremost, we do a lot of casework. We've closed over 700 cases. We have an incredible community services team that is here to help. And we thought it was important tonight to talk through how, there is a clear distribution of what we're helping with so that if you have friends, if you have family members in the district, if you have neighbors who may need help with these issues, they know that that is what we're here to do. Some of the top issues we've seen is with unemployment and the Department of Labor. That's representative of where we're at in our economy right now. We know that it's getting harder. There's an incredibly high cost of living. And so working with state agencies like the Department of Labor never tends to be easy, but as a state office, we've been really proud to help folks navigate that and also advocate for them with the Department of Labor. We have a lot of housing issues. What that looks like in the district is, of course, an affordability shortage, but it also looks like helping our tenants create tenant unions. It's looked like helping our, renters work with landlords or even adjust their rent because they've been charged or overcharged if they're in a rent stabilized apartment. And for our public housing in the district, we have Queensbridge and Ravenswood and Astoria houses. It's looked like working with NYCHA tenants to advocate for repairs or investments. We're really proud to have probably one of the highest concentration of public housing residents in the entire city and state. Queensbridge is the biggest in the country. And by working on housing and working with our tenants associations, I think what we're showing is that, public housing is a good model. We're keeping our public housing public and that our state offices need to be supportive and actually an active part of that. I think a few other notable things I definitely wanted to shout out tonight is we have clinics that help with legal aid. There's a lot of need for lawyers in this time. We are here to help you find one. It doesn't mean that we know our nonprofits are stressed, but it doesn't always mean that it's one-to-one, but we actively invite lawyers to come to our office hours so that folks can sit down and actually have some face time with a representative from the Legal Aid Society, from CORE, from other partners. All right, we're gonna move to the next slide. So in addition to our casework, we are doing a lot of events, and some of these will look familiar to a lot of you in the crowd, but we wanted to kind of give a sense of what we've been working on. We've done everything from, clinics around Omni, Accessoride. I know the transition's been hard for some of our neighbors, especially our older neighbors. So we're making sure we're out in the district and proactively educating folks on what that is. But we're also doing, you see housing clinics here. We did a clinic on how to start a union for folks who are interested in workplace organizing. And we've also done internet street smart. So as chair of technology, cybersecurity isn't just something that the state and the our federal government need to worry about. It is something we all need to worry about. And we want to continue doing that because we found that not only have some of our older neighbors been scammed, but actually the highest rate of scams are for young people. So for the students in the crowd, next time we do that, we want to see you there because these scams are getting a lot more intense with the introduction of new technology like artificial intelligence. We've done park cleanups, know your rights canvases. We did a casino town hall last year in Manhattan because we had a casino proposal in our district. We're going to keep on doing events. So if there's one that you want to see, or if you'd like to attend one of these and you want us planning another, feel free to reach out. And this is another way that we collect feedback from all of you who are here in this crowd. Okay. So I've talked a little bit about what our office does. We have casework, our inner constituent services. We are doing a lot of events on the ground, but part of my time is legislation and the legislative process. And I really want to bring you all along with me in that because right now, state legislation and what we do is our last line of defense when we are up against an increasingly hostile federal government. And I'll ask for a lot of help for our bills. We'll talk a little bit more about what we've gotten done this year. But to start, for folks who this may be new, our legislative process, very similar to the federal government, starts with a bill being introduced in both chambers. So I'm in the state Senate. You saw Claire earlier in the state assembly. In order to have a bill passed, you need the same version in both chambers. And they have to go through the committee process. So they have to get through their requisite committees. And then from the committees, they have to be reported to the floor. And once they're on the floor, we need a majority of votes in both chambers. And once they're passed through both chambers, we need the governor to sign them in order for something to become a law. And I start here with this because there are multiple barriers to getting something across the finish line. So when we think about big bills that we've done, we're really happy about, like the Build Public Renewables Act, which was a campaign promise and gave us the ability to own and build our own renewable energy sources as New York State. That took quite a while because it took time for it to get through each stage of this. For other bills that we've talked a lot about that need to get passed that haven't, think about something like the New York For All Act, which prevents police departments from cooperating with ICE outside of New York City, which is already a sanctuary city. You know, those bills need to get through both chambers, but oftentimes get through one, but not the other. So we have to remember that when we're working together on these big bills that even though I'm your state senator, I'm going to ask you for help in the assembly, or sometimes your assembly members will ask to support me in the state Senate. It also is not a transparent process. And I think that's one thing that those who are in power, like the governor, sometimes benefit from, because when she doesn't sign a bill, and it's the end of the year, it's a pocket veto. So even though we celebrate getting something passed, we still have to organize and push her oftentimes to make sure that she gets a version of it signed. And even in signing that, there can be additional changes to the bill. So all of these things are important for all of us to know. I think knowledge really is power for our local communities, and we're always happy to talk through where we're at in this legislative process. So now that we've done a quick primer, let's talk about our legislative wins. In 2025, I passed 19 bills. I co-sponsored 209. Thank you. And I introduced 49 with the incredible work of my team. We added a little bit of a breakdown on what those issue areas are. Obviously, as a chair of a committee, for both technology and elections, that's where the bulk of our work has gone. And as a committee chair, not only are we introducing legislation in that issue area, but we're also defining the agenda for both of those things. So, as a chair, I'm deciding what is getting passed through every committee meeting. And it's been really wonderful, especially on the elections front, to make sure we're passing pro-democracy bills. And so I will say, I think the state Senate and the state legislature has done a phenomenal job there. New York has some of the best voting rights laws in the country. But we're going to keep on, and I'll talk a little bit more about what work is left to do, because even though we have some strong laws here, we know that there are some Supreme Court cases coming down the pipeline. And we know that, our president has unfortunately signaled that they do not agree with some of our processes, like mail-in voting. And so we'll have to continue working in those areas to protect our voting rights. We also introduced a lot of bills on healthcare and housing, which were two of the biggest issues in our district. So in Albany, which I spend 6 months there a year from January to June. I go up half the time, so about 3 to 4 days a week. Can be longer if we're in the budget process, which I'm about to talk about. But during this time when we're passing bills, we're also working on our main function, which is the executive budget. And New York State has a budget of $254 billion. It is a lot of money, and there is a significant amount of time that we spend in the legislature debating on how that should be allocated. But what's important to keep in mind is that that 254 billion is for a state population of about over 19 million people. So when we pass the budget and we pass laws, we're passing it for everyone. And part of our funding then goes to the city council, which you'll see here has a budget of 15 billion for about 8 million people. And that pot of money will then be decided and distributed there. But really at the state level, we're funding these very, very big pots that do important things like funding our state parks. I want to shout out Gantry and Bushwick Inlet Parks. I know we have both in the room tonight. We're funding arts, we're funding education, we're funding so many different things. But it's really, the process is also very non-transparent and tends to be contentious, as I mentioned. So very quickly in how the budget gets passed, because I think it's important to know, it starts with the governor. She introduces her version of the budget. And then in response to her version of the budget, which is released January, February, we have hearings, we review it as our two chambers, and then the Senate and Assembly comes up with our own responses to the governor's budget. And those are known as our one-house budgets. We have to pass them within each chamber. So let's say I'm working with some of you for something in the district. In order to get that, we need to make sure that it is in both the Senate's version and the Assembly's version, because once those two one houses are passed, it is then left to the leadership of both chambers and the governor to negotiate directly. So at that point, legislators take a little bit more of a backseat, and it is the leader of the state Senate, Andrea Stewart-Cousins, it's our speaker, Carl Hastie, and the governor herself really going through each point. And so we want to make sure that if there's a room of 3 people, we know where 2 out of the 3 stand. And I'm really proud because even through this process, we've gotten some really big investments in our district. I'm going to talk about some of the big pots, but we've gotten, line items for coastal resiliency. We've gotten line items to support street safety studies. We've gotten line items to support some of our schools and universities. And so we want to continue doing that. And I want to thank the folks who have been part of that process, because the budget takes a long time, is often late, and there are many points where something can fall out. So when we've actually won on these things, it's been a result of a lot of collaboration and a lot of effort. So I'm going to move to some of our 2025 budget wins. I think a lot of these issues we've heard directly from folks in the crowd. We know that housing is number one. It's been top of mind. This year we funded $1.3 billion for affordable housing. Huge. Part of that is to fund the City of Yes efforts and what's happening right here in New York City, but then also to fund the Housing Access Voucher Program to keep people in their homes, because housing is not just making sure that we're creating more affordable housing, but it's also ensuring that people are staying in their homes, which is getting harder and harder to do with the rising cost of rents. And also hopefully a mayor that then freezes the rent. We funded climate and food security, which has been top of mind. Hunger Prevention Nutrition Assistance Program, HIPNAP, which is similar to SNAP. We're making sure people have money to buy food, Nourish New York, and the Environmental Protection Fund. Transportation, we talk a lot about the MTA, which is controlled at the state level. We funded that for $68 billion. It is a big price tag, and we've actually seen some of those benefits come right here to the district. If you got off at Queensboro Plaza today, the elevator improvements, the fact that we have an elevator now is part of that funding. If you came through Queens Plaza, also new elevators, a result of that funding. We've increased service. We've had a Queens bus network redesign that we worked with MTA and are pushing them now to also make some tweaks based on community feedback. But we've actually, as a transit-focused district, been able to bring a lot of that right here. Education and childcare, of course, $2.2 billion for childcare programs. That is still not enough. We are fighting for universal childcare next year. And I think we're feeling good about the signals from our city and administration, but also the state government, that is something we want to do, and our governor. And then, of course, healthcare at 1.6 billion. One of the first things I passed, I will also note on the health front, is a bill to protect our private health data, because even as we're trying to expand healthcare access, when we think about the ways that our district and our communities are being attacked, reproductive health care is top of mind. A few of the bills I passed have been in that area, but that bill to protect our private health data has been so important, because what we found is that other police departments from across the country were trying to surveil and see who would come to New York to exercise their right to an abortion. And we're going to continue passing bills like that, but it needs funding. So I'll talk a little bit more about some other healthcare associated funding pots that we're trying to get through next year's state budget. All right. Big budget, executive budget. We also have our district funding. That is our individual offices pot to give out to organizations, capital projects that are more like, more construction, physical spaces, operational, which tends to be more programming. And we've given that to dozens of organizations throughout the district in some very specific areas. Arts has actually been one of our biggest areas. We've funded art spaces and programming in all 3 boroughs. I want to shout out a few I see tonight. I know we have Chocolate Factory in the house. I'm sorry if I missed any. I know we have MOMI. I know we have a lot of our arts institutions. So thank you. I see you. Thank you for doing this. We're going to continue fighting for funding. And then we've also focused a lot on climate resiliency, food pantries, Variety Boys and Girls Club. I want to shout out Costa Constantinides, who's in the house as well, who leads up Variety, which is right now doing an incredibly groundbreaking effort to create affordable housing and serve 3 times the number of students they are currently serving. So this was a picture from a recent investment from our state government. We contributed to that as well to make sure that that effort was fully funded. But I want to deeply thank the folks who've been part of this, because it is a model for what we need: more after-school programming, more children and family programming, and of course, more affordable housing. So these are just some of the highlights. We've done safety and gun prevention programs. We've funded language access in the district. But if you are someone who has an organization, a nonprofit, that needs either operational funding, again, that's the programming, or capital, and that's like physical, tends to be more physical space, you can absolutely reach out to our office. Those decisions tend to be made in June after we receive what our grant is going to be. And before June, you can fill out a form through our website. At the end of this presentation, there's going to be a QR code to our website that will give you all the information on how to volunteer, how to sign up for our newsletter, but it'll also have on that same website this application form. And we want to make sure we're collecting as much as possible before we get to that June deadline. So I'm taking a step back. I keep earmarking here, but it's in our big 3-borough district, we have a lot of casework happening, a lot of events happening. We have a lot of legislation getting passed. We have our executive budget and our office specific budget, right? But what all of this work has looked like in the last 3 years, and certainly this year more than ever, is a distribution across 3 main issue areas. Affordability is, of course, number 1. That means making sure people right here have the ability to pay for their rent or their housing, and making sure that we have the ability to pay for food, for education, for healthcare. All of that has been part of our affordability agenda. But it's also been quality of life, because not only do we all collectively deserve as working people the ability to afford our lives and to live here in an expensive city, but to have a quality of life that we know is part of a dignified life. When we talk about quality of life, we're really looking at clean air to breathe. We're looking at protection from climate catastrophes that are worsening over time. We're looking at safe streets and street redesigns that make sure that we're protecting pedestrians, because across our 3-borough district, we've had an incredible number of deaths due to traffic violence. And it also means having open spaces and green spaces that we can enjoy, that when you leave your house, you don't have to assume you're paying at least $20 to $50 to enjoy something, that you can go somewhere that is free, that is publicly owned and publicly funded to enjoy yourself and your family. I think this district represents a lot of that because we have so many green spaces. But again, that isn't possible without all of our parks organizations. I see the Hunters Point Parks Conservancy in the house. Thank you so much. I mentioned Bushwick Inlet before, but there is an incredible group of organizers who have also been protecting that park. But all of this has made us a wonderful district to live in, but there's still more to do because with an increase in the number of people who live here, we're gonna also need to increase our infrastructure to support all of us. And then finally, and this one is a little bit more self-explanatory, it's democracy. It's acknowledging that we are in a real fight right now to protect it, that in order for us to live lives where we are healthy and thriving, that we have a solid quality of life in our local neighborhoods, we need a functioning government. And so making sure that our state government is responsive, that we're making the right investments, that we're working across levels of government. And as your state legislator, I am building relationships across the board to make that happen. That has been part of a functioning democracy. And I don't take it for granted either because that has not always been the case. And I have heard from so many of you that you have had moments or interactions with either politicians or offices from any level of government that have not actually helped you. And I think I really want to be clear that with this office, with what we're doing and how we're working, we are trying to change that. And by proving we can change that, by proving that we can have a functional government, it sends a signal to the rest of the city and the state that we have what we need, that organizing works, that from the bottom up, we can actually win big things together. So I want to thank you all for being part of that. And so that brings us to our next slide, which is how we've been taking feedback from all of you and transitioning it to our legislative priorities. We have introduced legislation to close our peaker plants on the note of breathing clean air. We have one of the largest power plants in the entire city in the district, Ravenswood. And there's a Renewable Ravenswood Coalition that's been working on this effort. But we need to retire not only the power plant, but the peaker plants that are in Queens and Brooklyn, because it's our local communities that are suffering the most by breathing that dirty air. And if you are less familiar with what a peaker plant is, these are the dirtiest plants that produce the most pollution, but they're left online because on days that are really, really hot or really, really cold, there's a strain on the grid. That is what our power authority and what our city and state is using to produce that extra energy. But it does not have to be this way. We can close these peakers. We can build renewable energy sources. That's why we passed the Build Public Renewables Act. But every time that we've gone up against fossil fuel companies, there has been a resistance to actually build out from our state government as much renewable energy as possible to take those offline. And there's been a resurgence of wanting to invest in fossil fuel infrastructure. I think most notably now the Nessie pipeline, which was an incredibly disappointing decision. And we're going to continue fighting to make sure we pass these peaker plant closure bills. And I know we have a wonderful coalition of folks right here in the room to do that. A couple of other things I want to call out. We had the Western Queens Street Safety Plan. We passed bills like Sammy's Law. Yes, let's give love to Sammy's Law. We're making sure that, in addition, making sure that we are allowed to set our own speed limits in our own local communities. Yep. And then open street redesigns in both Queens and Brooklyn. We've heard about the incredible noise from seaplanes and helicopters. Can I see anyone who has been to one of our parks on either side and has been annoyed about the loud? It's actually insane. And I think I see a lot over here. It is one of these, and I'm really proud of this bill too. It is a clear example of how the city serves millionaires and billionaires that are able to travel by helicopter and seaplane over protecting our quality of life, the majority of the public. And so we've gotten a lot of great momentum around this effort. I'm going to talk a little bit more about the healthcare work. We had a hospital closure in the district that we fought against, and then we are doing a lot around gender affirming care, but we'll talk a little bit more about those two moving forward. All right, we'll move to the next. And I see the pictures are not rendered, but imagine wonderful pictures of all of these things with a lot of the faces in this room. I want to shout out McGinnis Boulevard, that we talked a lot about street safety, an incredible win. Thank you to the Make McGinnis Safe Coalition for all the work they've done in Greenpoint. It was a fight to do a street redesign that the mayor's administration refused to do against their own Department of Transportation's recommendation. And it took a lot of organizing to get the first half. We are going to get the second half in with the Zeron administration coming in. So very excited for that. We talked about arts. We're doing arts roundtables. Mount Sinai Beth Israel, one of the most moneyed hospital networks, threatened to completely leave our Manhattan constituents. And after months of organizing, we were able to actually make sure there was a urgent care that was opened that had additional services so that people have somewhere to go. And then, of course, the casino, as some of you may know, in Manhattan, we had a casino proposal. It took a lot of organizing to make sure we voted against that. But since then, we have actually defeated the casino proposal in Manhattan. And it's really representative of putting people first before the profit of the billionaire developers that wanted to come in. And it was purely a response to the over 700 constituents who came to our last town hall to report that they didn't want to see that in our Midtown community. All right, we can go to the next. All right, so just a little bit of a roundup of some of the things we've done this year. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about how we're building on that. And then we'll get into that Q&A. A reminder, please hand out your cards if you have any questions on anything that I've been talking about. And then my team is in the back to grab just in case. So, all right, let's get into what's next. Fighting fascism. Very, very honestly. It is not an understatement to say that even in the first almost year of this federal administration, that there has been significant damage done to our communities, whether it's been our immigrant community with people being kidnapped off the street, whether it's been working families dependent on programs like SNAP for food, whether it's been the future of healthcare and public housing. A lot of damage has already been done. So as your state government, moving forward, we have to figure out what we can intentionally do to protect ourselves, but also start filling some of those gaps. And so I'm going to talk about a few of those categories, but in this is a collective project. And if there is something you want to see us doing, if there is something that we haven't done yet, please let us know, because protecting our democracy, fighting fascism is really going to take all of us to win. So I'm going to start going through a few, but happy to hear in the comments or online or in person what else we should be doing right now. All right, fighting fascism. Can we go to the next slide, please? Thank you. Immigration policies are top of mind. There are a lot of bills. I'm actually going to take this because I'm looking at this. All right, there are a lot of bills that I've already talked about, New York for All being one of them. We want to make sure that that's passed through this next legislative session in January. Access to representation, self-explanatory, that there is legal support for our immigrant communities that are navigating deportation proceedings or even going to 26 Federal Plaza and, having court hearings where they're potentially getting kidnapped. I've actually done court watch there. It is devastating to see what has happened, but the outcomes are always more optimistic when there is a lawyer in the room. So this has been an incredible priority for our immigrant community. Dignity, not detention. We want to make sure we're not using our local jails we're not using our local jails to house folks who are going through deportation proceedings. We should not be using our current city and state resources to fund a outright attack on our immigrant communities. And then finally, the MELT Act. And again, when I said I need all your help, I need you all writing to me, writing to your other legislators that you support this, that you want to see this happen. And most importantly, writing to our governor as well, so she knows this is something you want to see. Finally, the MELT Act, which requires ICE agents to be unmasked, which should not be a controversial thing and yet is. So I am tired of seeing, honestly, cowardly ICE agents hiding behind masks as they terrorize our communities. And we're proud to be a co-sponsor on this bill, but we're going to make sure we actually get it passed this upcoming year. The next slide. Thank you. Gender affirming care. So very quickly and there's a picture of a press conference we had on this earlier this year. We have in Manhattan a hospital that you all may know, NYU Langone. And when the federal administration put out an executive order that talked about gender affirming care, they were the first to actually agree. And yeah, it was one of the most disturbing things because at the time, our attorney general, our current attorney general, who's been amazing and a partner in all of this, Tish James, she came out and she said it is illegal to discriminate against your patients. It is illegal to stop offering gender affirming care, especially for minors. You should resume this. They did not listen. They were more concerned about working and listening to our federal administration than our own attorney general. And as a state legislator, it is never a good sign when I have to spend my time reminding our institutions that they have to follow New York State law. But that's exactly what we did. We protested. We actually sent over 10,000 letters to NYU Langone this year. We marched to them to drop off those letters. We had press conferences and sent letters from our office with all of our overlapping electeds in Manhattan to pressure them. And they, for the most part, they have resumed care. But we still have a problem because even though they've resumed care, they haven't been clear about their policies moving forward, and there isn't a clear fund for folks to afford this care. So while I'm really proud of the work our office did, establishing a gender affirming care fund means that the people who need this care can continue to receive it or who need it in the future. And this is exactly the type of funding that is being cut from our federal administration, from other sources. And so we need to make sure as a state we are earmarking money for this. We also have a gender affirming care program. And I'm really proud, of course, that it sets a standard right here in this district that we care about our trans neighbors. We care about our nonconforming neighbors. And really, this is a place where everyone, no matter who you are, how old you are, you have a right fundamentally to healthcare that you want. So I'm going to keep doing that. But thank you. All right, we can go to the next slide. Federal budget cuts. I mentioned we had a town hall on this a few weeks ago. And if you're interested in hearing the full rundown of what's been cut and how that impacts New York, please go to our website. You can find a link to that. There's a lot of good information there, but running through a few of these areas for our priority for next year. The next slide. Healthcare. I talked about what we did in 2025. We need more money for our community hospitals. We need more money for our bigger hospitals like Bellevue, which is in Manhattan. We're calling for $200 million there. We're also calling for the New York Health Act to make sure we have a single payer healthcare system. Now is the time to do it. And ultimately, part of public safety and quality of life is making sure we have the mental health beds and mental health resources. Even though we funded as a state the opening, I think not this year, but the year before, of over 1,000 new beds, it doesn't mean all of them have come online. So a lot of my work has been making sure our hospitals are bringing those beds online and that we're actually creating a series of resources around folks who are in crisis so that they have not only inpatient services, those beds at Bellevue, but that they have the funding to have outpatient services. That means housing, counselors, et cetera. So all of this funding, we want to make sure that we're getting through our state budget. Next big area we're going to see a lot of cuts is food, of course, food insecurity. One way that we're working on this in the district, we see a lot of SNAP theft or SNAP fraud that happens. It's been actually a consistent piece of feedback from our casework. And so we introduced the SNAP Protection Act to help address this issue. It's not just making sure we have money for these things. I know right now our state government has now put this year $65 million to help cover some of the costs for SNAP, especially as we're now going through the government reopening and those benefits being distributed. But getting that money and making sure it's used for the people in the way that it should, in terms of just making sure folks aren't the victims of fraud in our district, that is a priority. And that's why we introduced the SNAP Protection Act. The next big category is climate, of course. We're opposing the NESE pipeline for this year and beyond. We're calling for 15 gigawatts of public renewable energy. our state government can and should be building this, but unfortunately, we haven't seen the New York Power Authority meet us at this 15 gigawatt request. So we're going to continue fighting for the build out of public renewables, as you see there, but we're going to continue pushing our and holding our state authorities accountable for the mandates that we've already passed and the climate Leadership and Community Protection Act, known as the CLCPA, which says in New York State, we need to be a majority renewable energy by 2030. So complying with our own New York State law. So that's been a big issue for next year. And then finally, I think that was, we'll go to the next. Finally, how are we going to pay for this? Taxing the rich. It is beyond me that as a state government, even though we have a suite of bills and tools we can use, simply because, one person or especially our governor has signaled that we do not want to tax the ultra wealthy, that we have not done it. We are in a budget crisis. We certainly are going to have to make up the cost next year. And the bills that you see here are incredible revenue generators, whether it's taxing corporate profits for $7 billion a year, adding new personal income tax brackets that would generate $20 billion a year, or making sure that capital gains are taxed at a higher rate, which would generate $12 billion a year. Each one of these dollars is a representation of money that is being hoarded that needs to be redistributed into our communities and redistributed now. So I'm really proud to be a co-sponsor of all of these things. It's been a big platform. There are a lot of organizing efforts. And of course, I will ask all of you to be part of this fight to tax the rich in the upcoming year and through the next legislative session. Finally, protecting democracy. We've talked so much about this. If we go to the next slide, I talked a little bit about how we're doing that through our two committees. Elections, we're looking at election cybersecurity, deep fakes and AI. We're looking at protecting public campaign finance and making sure that money in politics is being held to account with PAC disclosures. As chair of technology, we're continuing to put guardrails on AI because it is an existential threat to our workforce. And we're making sure that technology benefits all of us through closing the digital divide, funding digital literacy, and real workforce development opportunities, many of which we've started working with a lot of our partners here in the district. And I think with that, I'm going to round it off with the continuation of our district organizing. On the next slide, we just kind of put a general overview of some of our 2026 organizing efforts. One that I want to call out is the Western Queens Clergy Network. That is our office convening faith leaders, convening elected offices and immigrant justice groups to create a response network. I think it is fair to say that in the next year, we're going to see raids on our communities. So this Western Queens Clergy Network is really a foundational attempt to get us organized and prepared for what's ahead. We have a Manhattan public safety plan that will be extending, that talks a lot about Bellevue and the mental health beds we want to see come online there. We'll continue to work through the other boroughs on a lot of that. And then NYCHA funding, supporting artist spaces. There's still more work to do with street safety and our open spaces and more. So if there's something that you want to see us organizing around that isn't up here, please let us know. But right now, this has been representative of a lot of the feedback we've heard in the last year from most of you in this crowd. All right, so we're going to wrap this up, if you want to go to the next slide, with a call to action. And that means and I know I said there would be a QR code. It looks like it's not rendering here. But if you go to the link that's right underneath it, the nysenate.gov/SOTD for State of the District 25, you'll be able to sign up for our newsletter, stay involved, volunteer, join us in Albany if you have time between January and June to come lobby around these bills and really just be part of these broader fights with us. I keep on saying, it's not just our state government, it's really a collective effort. I know we are one of the most organized districts in the entire state, but now is the time to really use the networks that we've already built on the ground to push some of the big, big fights that are ahead of us, the bills that haven't been passed, the things that you clap for. This is where we really are going to need us to dig in as much as possible. So we've gone through a lot tonight. There's a lot of good work that we're doing, a lot of work ahead. But I want to get to our Q&A and make sure that we're answering some of your questions. So, does anyone have any cards? And I think we've done a little bit of a, why don't we start with questions from the audience? We're going to get a couple up here. Okay, perfect. We'll start with in here. Amazing. Okay, thank you guys so much. So, the first question is really great. It is from Sheila. If you want to say hi, Sheila. And Sheila asked, what can be done to advance free buses in New York City, at least for seniors and the disabled at a minimum? So our incredible assembly members, Ron Mamdani, was able to win a free bus pilot, which was 5 bus routes across the city. So it can be done. But what needs to be done next is continuing that funding because it was ended. We didn't fund it through this year's executive budget. So while I said we got a lot of good money for the MTA, we didn't really have a pot to fund another free bus pilot or really free buses broadly. So next year, we need to work with the city administration to actually earmark that money. And when it comes to our seniors and our disabled community, to your point, we're actually prioritizing now a lot of those projects in the district that are around accessibility. It's not just elevators and escalators, it's also making sure there's signage, making sure there's tactile edges, making sure that the speakers are working and that the announcements are happening. And that work is already happening without the bus pilot. So I really do want to shout out the MTA team for being a partner in our accessibility series, working with us in some of the Omni work. But even with all of those projects being done, if we do not have fast and free buses or an affordable transit network, it's not going to be used by the people that, like myself, like all of us who really need it and rely on it. So wonderful question. Appreciate it. All right, I'm going to move through these pretty quickly. The next one is from Catherine Thompson. Catherine, if you want to say hi. Hi. The question is, where is it? It's at the end. Okay. Is it for public land for public good? Do you want to ask your question? Because I want to make sure we can get Catherine a mic. Yeah.
It doesn't.
Here we go.
It doesn't.
I mean, you. Okay, is it on the top? I see. I don't see it written out, Catherine. Sorry about that. I see. Okay. In North Brooklyn, is this the piece? Okay. In North Brooklyn, there's a proposal to upzone publicly owned MTA land to make way for 3 private mega high-rises on the edge of the Bushwick Inlet, only 50 feet from the water's edge, threatening the public Bushwick Inlet Park and the unique tidal inlet itself. Our neighborhood already has built the most amount of housing, market rate and affordable in all of New York City, and we are in the lower 10% of open space per capita in NYC. I represent nearly 5,000 people who have signed our petition to save the inlet. When I ask, when are elected officials going to put their foot down and say enough is enough to private development on publicly owned land, and really deeply examine the opportunities for true public benefits that should be guiding public land for public good. So I guess the question is when we are gonna, it's a great question. Thank you, Catherine. I think the fight for to keep public land publicly owned has been a big one in this district, and for public good as well. And we've seen that through the One LIC fight that happened right here in Long Island City. And what's happening in Bushwick Inlet Park is an extension of that. I think we've prioritized developers for far too long. So, we are with you in this fight. Unfortunately, when it comes to rezonings, those tend to be, and also city-owned land done at the city level. I know we have some great partners in Northern Brooklyn at the city level who have been very responsive. So we're going to continue working with them to see what can be done in this specific plot. But ultimately, we have so much waterfront development, but we know that these are all flood zones. And I think that no, to your point, we oftentimes are so focused on the upzoning piece and private development that those developers aren't actually focused on protecting us by building the flood infrastructure to protect everyone. And actually, these high rises exacerbate the flooding in those areas. So there are bills to tax those new developments. I know Assemblymember Gallagher introduced one. There are bills to ensure that we are actually investing in our public land. So what we've done, for example, in McCarran Park to create, with the asphalt there to create additional flooding infrastructure, making sure they're soaking up as much water as possible. But ultimately, all of this to say, we are with you in this fight. That is a yes, enough is enough. And there is so much more we need to do even beyond this one place because it's representative of a broader fight to keep our land public and to make sure we're protected from flooding. So thank you. Thanks. Okay. Question number 3 is from Kevin LaShera in Greenpoint, which I see over. Is that you, Kevin? Yeah. Hi, thank you, Kevin, for your question. He asked, you spoke a bit about projects that you're proud of supporting this past year. Can you talk about a few street safety and public space projects you are looking forward to supporting in the coming year? Yes. So I think one of the ones that come to mind, in Queens, we know we have our 31st Avenue open streets. We want to continue. I now see right next to you. Hi. We want to continue supporting our open streets. Right in Northern Brooklyn, there are a number of them that we've talked about, whether it's, closing down sections by our train stops, right, to make sure that they're public plazas, not just on the weekends, but permanently. There are other spaces near new developments. We have the New York Liberty that is coming to our district. We've already been talking to them about street safety redesigns near that site and adding additional green space. We're really excited. Of course, we talked about McGinnis Boulevard. I feel confident we're getting that second half, that northern half. We're going to keep on making sure that happens, though, and when the new administration comes in. So these are some of the ones I'm excited for. And yet, there is more to be done. So for our street safety coalitions that are here today and our open space advocates, please let us know what you want to see us working on. There are a number of projects we're actively tracking that we send letters to the DOT about, that we, are as elected officials calling folks across levels of government in the current mayor's administration, I'm sure in the next mayor's administration. So when you let us know which ones you want us to prioritize, we know where to be the loudest, and we're going to continue doing that as a response. So thank you so much for all the work you all have already done. Thank you, Kevin. All right. And the last in-person question we have, although I'm happy to grab some more, is from Becca. I am going to ask Becca if you were in the crowd. Hi, Becca. Becca, do you mind asking this one just because I think it's I just want to make sure I read it right. Oh, this one is the intersection of the 43rd Avenue, 27th Street. And I think there's a mic right behind you. Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah.
It's an intersection just about a block from here. My directions are all screwed up. So I guess it's probably north. I don't know. It's a really bad intersection. Within the last maybe 2 years, they finally put striped crosswalks in it, but it has, I guess, east and west traffic on 43rd. Hunter Street to the, I guess would be south, is going south, but Hunter Street north is going north, and 27th Street is coming into that. The only stop sign is on 27th Street coming into the intersection, and that is back further. No one stops at the stop sign. They stop at the street instead of stopping and pulling forward. Half the time, if they do stop, it's a very heavily trafficked pedestrian crosswalk. And I ride a bike every day to work, and I have to make a left-hand turn onto Hunter Street from 43rd. And I have had numerous occasions where cars with the one stop sign pull out and almost hit me because they seem to think that I don't have the right of way to make that left-hand turn. I've also had cars pull out or heading west, do a U-ey in front of me in the intersection. And all the meantime, we have people walking with their carriages, their strollers, yes, stripe crosswalks, but a lot of drivers don't realize that that means you're supposed to stop and let the pedestrians go. I don't know, and there's not really a lot of signage. It is a prime place to have stop signs, not a stop traffic light, because people run traffic lights. People are more apt to stop at a stop sign than they are at a traffic light. And I've been complaining about this for 14 years because I work for the Department of Health, and for a long time I walked to work also. And it's with all the advent now of all these high rises around here, there's a tremendous amount of people, and someone's going to get hit. I mean, I've almost been hit on a bicycle numerous times, and then they yell at me, even though I have the right of way. So
Yeah, I know that I know exactly the intersection. Is it the one by like Souther? Now they just opened a new restaurant. Yep, the new Thai restaurant. Oh yeah. I walk my dog and the dog that you saw on the first slide, across that street every day. I have also almost gotten hit. It's one that we flagged. And of course, unfortunately, in this administration, we haven't seen as much of a response in all the intersections as we want. So with the next administration, it is thank you for flagging this for us. But yes, already top of mind. I've had cars almost hit me. I've like gotten into arguments on it. So I'm right there with you as a pedestrian. We can definitely look at the redesign and a study there as well. So thank you, and continue to send us if there are other intersections that you've experienced, lack of safety, not clear signage, et cetera. Please let us know. We're happy to also put that on our list. I will also say it's another case for universal daylighting. We need more visibility on our corners. I know we have a lot of fans of universal daylighting here. There's a bill at the city level that we're actually really supportive of, and we want to see that happen. There's also a state bill for that. Although on that street, it's a little wider, so there is some visibility, but it's really more about making sure there are stop signs and that it's actually prioritizing protecting pedestrians instead of right now it's more designed, and as much of our city infrastructure is to support drivers and cars. So share the frustration. Thank you for the question, and we'll push on that, but we'll also push on some of the bigger things like the universal daylighting efforts. But thank you. I see a couple of more questions. I actually see a hand over here, which I'm happy to take hands too. If we want to do the mic over here.
Oh. Hi, my name is Trina Rose. I'm a constituent in the district. I'm a board certified patient advocate, so I focus mostly on health things. So I'll just quickly say we definitely need fair pay for home care, and also consider repealing the contract for PPL for CDPAP. I'll leave that separately for an after conversation, but there are many disabled folks and seniors in New York State that are suffering under this new CDPAP home care regime. But my question is actually about affordable housing. I am very excited about new affordable housing in the city, in the state, in our district. My concern with affordable housing is that the developers still get to set the rents at 130% AMI, area median income. And so what's considered affordable, or under the definition of affordable, is a one bedroom that's $3,500 or something, And I'm just wondering, at the state or city level, what can we do to make sure that affordable housing actually incentivizes the developers to set the income levels at a lower percentage instead of the maximum that they can utilize to just get that tax credit? I'm also on a fixed income, a disabled woman, and I'm on a fixed income and I use a subsidy for my housing. And the payment standards for the subsidy doesn't match up with the rents on, let's say, New York City Housing Connect. So there's a disconnect because I can't use one level of affordable housing to give me a one-up with another. I can't pair it together because of the disconnect. So I'm just wondering, at the state level, what can we do to make sure that when, I'm sure in the next couple of years, maybe even at the city level, we'll see a lot more affordable housing. We're excited for that. I just want to make sure it's truly affordable.
This is such a good question. Thank you so much. So a couple of things there. I think the first thing is, and what's important to know, is that when we talk about affordability and how it's calculated, that's actually controlled at the federal level. And we have some incredible champions. I want to shout out two in the room tonight. We have Dan Wiley from Nydia Velázquez's office, Congresswoman Velázquez. I believe we also have a rep from Congressman Nadler's team here tonight, who's been an amazing partner. I think they were here a little bit earlier, but they have co-sponsored legislation. I believe Congresswoman Velázquez does have a bill on this. But given the current makeup of Congress, it's unlikely to pass right now in this moment, right? And that's why we're fighting so hard. And we'll talk about that stuff at a non-government fundraiser. But given that we can't change that, I think what we have done at the state level is try to fund things like the Housing Access Voucher Program, to redesign our tax incentive system to try to incentivize more affordable housing. We did that last year through a new tax program that was a new version of an old one. It was 421A that now has turned into 45X. And that has incentivized deeper rates of affordability. But at the end of the day, it's always incumbent on the developer to decide whether or not they want to take the tax incentives, what they, the number of units, et cetera. So to that point, we like starting there because I think I'm with you. Affordable, how it's defined now, is not it's not affordable. It's not, when we talk about affordability, we mean deeply affordable, and certainly not what we're seeing. And the other part of that is when there are multiple programs that can't be used together, right? And I think that's the piece and feedback that is so helpful to hear, because I would love to talk maybe a little bit more about what the state can do to remedy that. If there is legislation we could introduce, I think it should be that, if you qualify for multiple things, you're able to get the maximum amount of support, but that has not been the case. So please, for everyone too in this room, if you've had a similar issue, this is where, as you saw, we take some district issues, we translate that to legislation, and I'd love to talk to you more about, what you've seen and experienced. So thank you. Yeah. I see a +1 on that. Amazing. Yeah. So all of that given, I know we're coming up on time. I do want to highlight, we had some pre-submitted questions, some around ICE and what we're doing. I know we talked through some of those bills and on the district organizing efforts we're a part of. I also want to say our Congresswoman Nydia Velázquez actually hosted a roundtable on this earlier this year. So I know that, we'll continue to organize across levels of government. We had questions about AI legislation. Next year, I think one of the biggest questions was around AI safety that we saw online. I want to highlight our New York AI Act to respond to that question. It's a bill that is a private sector regulation bill that actually puts some guardrails, because when we talk about AI, it's a lot like a car. We have this nice car, it can get us to some really cool places, but as a society, we haven't built the roads yet. We haven't built the stop signs. We're talking a lot about street safety tonight, so you know how important doing that is. But we're going to continue pushing that bill specifically next year. And I think the question was also on a New York Times essay, we are all going to die soonish because of runaway AI. I think if we put the right guardrails in place, we can see a future where, we are benefiting from this technology and not being hurt by it. We had, and I want to say very quickly, I think we had a couple of other questions on specific bills. I see another intersection here. So for those of you who submitted these questions, for the ones that we haven't already answered through our presentation, but about some of these specific things, if you're watching online, we will follow up with you and send you a clear response. But if there's any other questions in person. I think I see one last one. I'm going to go over here. And then with that, I'm happy to hang out for a little bit. I'll be here, happy to talk a little bit more, and hopefully see you all in Albany next year. Sorry. Yeah, sorry. It has to be just, I know I'm getting the nudge on time. So just like very quickly in like a minute. Yeah.
I typed it out.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
I've been in my Greenpoint apartment since 2009. The landlord rented to me at market rate and withheld the rent regulated status of the unit for 7 years. In 2016, my neighbor and I filed rent overcharge complaints with DHCR and were immediately met with a vile harassment campaign. That included the landlord physically threatening us if he caught us walking around the neighborhood by ourselves, threatening to assault me. I see a kid over there. Hurling racial and homophobic slurs at us, stealing our mail, stealing our trash, leaving feces on our doors, etc. It still continues to this day in different forms. As of 2020, New York Penal Code states that it's up to a felony to harass rent-regulated tenants in any capacity. The definition of harassment in the Penal Code is now the disturbance of peace, quiet, and repose. That law is mostly unknown to law enforcement and to my knowledge has yet to be enforced. My hallway neighbor and I won our rent overcharge complaints with an order finding willful overcharge with treble damages. It's been years and the landlord has not paid us. The landlord purchased the building 25 years ago and immediately fully gut renovated the building and the apartment, but without work permits and without ever having a certificate of occupancy on file. For 25 years, the landlord has collected market rents from tenants when New York state law states that landlords can't charge rent without a C of O on file. The landlord owns a few other rent-stabilized buildings in Greenpoint with the same pattern of tenant harassment, gut renovations, market rent listings, and no C of Os on file. The landlord has since opened a marijuana dispensary on the first floor of the building that I live in. There's still no C of O on file. Will you connect with me, a person you serve, and lift up my voice? Those are words of the person who introduced you. Will you ensure that you will do everything in your power to connect me with the new administration to share the details of this case so that Zoran, who's vowed to hold unscrupulous landlords accountable, can ensure that the landlord is investigated and prosecuted appropriately, and so that the illegally deregulated rent stabilized apartments can be reverted back to regulated status for New Yorkers in our district needing affordable housing. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you for typing all of that out and for the question. That is exactly the type of thing. Happy to follow up on to get more of that information. I will also say for folks who are rent stabilized that we can request your rental history, and that one way to prove that the landlord is overcharging is using that history. So if you haven't done that, if you live in a rent stabilized apartment, that is one thing our office can help you do. We have heard a lot of cases of landlord harassment. So now I know we are wrapping up and this is time. Let's definitely want to direct you. And if a member of my team can raise their hand and we can get some of your information. Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you so much for bringing that today. But yes, happy to talk more about what the avenues are with the new administration. So with that, thank you so much. I appreciate it. With that, I know we're at time and want to be respectful. We got a lot of folks in the room tonight. I want to say thank you so much for coming. Thank you again to CUNY Law for having us. There is so much work to do. And I hope you all have a wonderful Thanksgiving. And I'll be right here in case folks want to chat. Thank you.